Now we have Lovecraft's Cats and Other Tales of Weird Fiction. This is by C.P. Webster. This again is a anthology work. It's a recommendation. If you love Lovecraftian, creepy, weird tales, I think you would enjoy this. That is a recommendation from me. I will say we do have a good amount of stories here. We have 14 tales, and from what I can tell, 4 of these stories are stories that I have not read before, meaning I didn't see them published anywhere else before this. The 4 that I haven't read before were Lovecraft's Cat, The Jackals Will Come for Their Own, The Four Horsemen, and Still Here. The other stories I have read and reviewed in previous videos, so I'm actually not going to be covering those. I will say that if you don't know, if you haven't read C.P. Webster before, this is a very good introduction to him and his work and his stories, so check that out. So I'm just going to be covering these new ones because I've already covered all these other stories in previous videos. Lovecraft's Cat, this is our opening story, and it's a new one. This is about a man in a bookstore, and this little cat leads him to some books, and he's reading through this, and he is reading some script inside the book, and it's about a man who also finds this black cat, and he is taking care of this cat and feeding her. Our protagonist returns to England, and he is still reading over these kind of journal entries here. And the journal just kind of ends. It just, yeah. The man writing it says, and this in the end is ... and that's it. He just kind of writes it off as an odd coincidence that he also has a black cat with a damaged left ear, but then he starts seeing the black cat out in his daily life. The cat ends up taking residence with him, and he starts having these strange dreams where he's just kind of in darkness. The cat is leading him on this path. And like the journal entry, it seems like he's having the same dream as the man who wrote the journal. And yeah, it's a little, and it gets a little strange where the sun goes and then the sky is filled with constellations. And some tall shape greets them. He cannot see its face. Yeah, it sort of ends there where, this is the cat's kind of master, which isn't really described. It's just like a creature, a being, something that probably shouldn't exist or shouldn't be there, but it's not like a horror or a terror. It's just kind of an unknown being, and it ends with, and we three stood together beneath undimmed stars waiting for the rising of a gibbous moon. Not necessarily saying that anything bad is gonna happen to him, or not like a violent end, like tentacle fish monster eats the guy, but it's just an odd but nice journey. It's not like a violent Lovecraftian thing. It's just it's strange, right? It's I don't have a good word for it. Ethereal? I don't know. Whatever. I'm not good at these fucking words. The Jackals Will Come for Their Own. This is actually a sequel to an earlier story, The Pimlico Vampire, and actually the Pimlico Vampire comes just before this one in this anthology. So that was about this man who fed on other humans to extend his own life, and he was supposedly killed at the end of the last story, but he is in fact alive. Supposedly, the killer died in this infamous disaster in 1972, and now we're in Egypt, and we have a journalist who wrote it up, and we also have a policeman who was a part of the investigation, and they just met by coincidence on vacation when they're both in Egypt, and the policeman is certain that he has seen the vampire, the man that supposedly died in that plane crash, and he's here in Cairo. The journalist doesn't really want to believe it. He thinks it's kind of crazy, but he's going to humor the guy, and they end up following the man he believes to be the vampire, and it turns out he is in fact the vampire, and he did survive. there's this new dig happening at one of the pyramids, and they go down there through these passageways, and they find Darcy there, and he is kneeling before this statue, and he's praying to Anubis. And Darcy is able to incapacitate the pair of them through hypnotism, but they overcome him. And Darcy ends up basically just fading into dust after they defeat him. And I thought that was a nice little sequel. After that, we had what? The Four Horsemen. Okay, this also appears in the Aegean 11, so I'm going to cover it here rather in the Aegean. We're in South Africa. This is one of the Boer Wars. I forget which one, but it's South Africans, right? Dutchmen versus the British Army. Britain is trying to take over, and make it their colonies instead of the Dutch colonies. So we have 4 riders. One of them is a Dutchman, one of them is Irish, and then we have 2 younger men, and they have just lost a battle, and they're riding into the hills trying to avoid the British and to escape, and to eventually link up with the other Boer forces. So they end up going into some mountains where all the locals avoid it because it's supposedly cursed, and they don't believe that, and they just need to get away from the British patrols. So they go up there. It's odd. They see some cave paintings that look sort of like constellations, and then we have some figures that look like they're carrying spears, and they're surrounded by some strange black beings in the paintings. They put their horses in a cave next to them, and they're in one cave. And then they hear these horrible sounds, and they rush in, and all of the horses are gone. And the walls, the floors, the roof, they're all awash with crimson swaths of blood. And there's this trail that goes down this opening in the rear wall, and there was no opening before, but now there is. 2 of the men go down to investigate what killed the horses. There was the American and Beckman ends up killing the American. He says he felt the presence of the beast, and it's not the first time, and that the American's death was necessary. So it seems like one of the guys went mad and killed the other guy, and so they don't have horses. One of them is dead, the other guy's gone crazy, and Beckman seems even crazier because he says that he heard the words of the beast, and the beast says that he has to sacrifice things to stop it from rising, and he did. Only blood will keep it at bay. I killed so many times to appease the beast, to satiate it. And before the other 2 can get the hell out of there and away from this madman, they are ambushed by some British soldiers who also have a doctor with them. They take their guns away, and they want to know what the hell is going on, what they're doing here. The situation deteriorates even more with Beckman slitting his own throat. The soldiers won't heed their warnings, and they go down there to try to find out what the hell is going on. The monster, which is like made out of black tentacles, ends up killing basically all of them, and we end with the older guy staying behind so he can blow up some explosives and hopefully keep the creature in the cave, like just buried in the rubble, with the younger man Stridum able to escape on his own. And yeah, we end there. I thought this one was very good. Very pleased with it. He's done at least one more about like South Africa that I can remember. It might be The Eyes of Punigawa. I cannot remember off the top of my head, but I believe that one was also like kind of South Africa, like Boer time period. And the last new one for me was Still Here, our last story on page 168. And this is about 2 friends. One's a doctor, the other's a solicitor, which just means lawyer. They're just talking with each other, and they're discussing this case about some playboy that disappeared. The journal entries that his doctor friend wants him to read. The journal talks about how this man recognizes where he is, but it's wrong, and that the room that he is in is indeed his own, but it's just different. He's not home, he's somewhere else, but it looks like home. And he gets into his story, how he bought this house, and then things are just kind of different. Things are just kind of odd. He finds this weird little box that needs a key, and there were some weird keys that were left over when he bought the house. So he ends up opening the box, and there's no money, there's no treasure when he does finally get the box open, but it looks like a tablet made of very old beeswax, and there's also a new key here. He knows that there's no lock that this key could possibly open in the house, so he's not sure what it is, and then he starts having some dreams. And in these dreams, he's in this room with his desk, and it's all familiar for him. And then there's this iron box that had the key, but then he realizes that the key in the box is gone now for some reason. The door slams shut behind him, the camel turns blue, and I whirled about, and there was someone, this tall shadow of a man formed of darkness, coming towards me. I could not see his face. He fails to reach the key twice, and then he wakes up, and then he sees that, the creature was reaching for him and grabbed his arm, and now he sees that his arm is wounded, that his arm has this really nasty rash on it. He has some more dreams where the man wakes up. He finds himself sitting here at his desk. The key is in his hand, and he tries to leave the room, and he cannot leave the room. So I am seated here still, and I do not know what else to do but wait until it's dark once more, and perhaps I shall dream again. The two men are talking about the disappearance and how soon, it's going to be legally decided that the bachelor's going to be declared dead and all that. But the man, Grosvenor, is not happy because he went up to the house and he did find something in that house that should not have been there. And he pulls out an old key. He says that he's certain that the key was not there when I first looked about the house. And yet when I went into that room again, well, there it was, sitting on the shelf over the fire as plain as day, and with this. And he pulls out a crumpled scrap of paper. He passed the paper to Massey, who took it with a raised eyebrow. Perching his reading glasses on the end of his nose, he turned the paper to the light of the lamp. It was a ragged corner of yellow foolscap, torn and curled. Scrawled across the lined fragment were two words written in a fresh blue ink. Still ... here. Very nice ending. I would say of the 4 stories that were new to me, Still Here was probably my favorite. A lot of Lovecraft stuff. Some of that is kind of about more of a seaside setting, but we also have some African stuff. We have English Gothic manners. The Duelist is about some World War I fighter pilots that end up, being transported into a not good dimension. That one's great as well. So I think this is a great sampling of C.P. Webster stuff. If you want a longer work, he has The Horror Beneath, which is a little book, and that is more of a traditional Lovecraftian, English manner. So yeah, check that out. And he's supposed to have a new book, Come the Dawn's Light, which seems to be a break from what I kind of know him for, the Lovecraftian stuff, and that's supposed to be a swashbuckling sword and sorcery novella. So yeah, that will, I guess, be out later this year.